After our traditional holiday dinner, as we sit on the sofa trying to keep ourselves awake until the midnight chimes in Plaza del Sol mark the rhythm with which we pop those grapes we've already seeded and peeled into our mouths, as the television gives us a nostalgic run of musical hits from years gone by, my mate turns to me and asks me how New Year's was celebrated in my household when I was a child. I have to admit to him that I can only remember one New Year's celebration, and only very, very indirectly. I started by saying, it was winter, then realized that, of course, New Year's Eve is celebrated in the winter, at least in the hemisphere we've lived in our entire lives. We both laughed. It was winter was actually an introduction to the sleeping arrangement for my siblings and I at that time in our childhood. My dad was still alive, so I would have been less than 10 years old. Sometime in November, my folks curtained off doorways and closed off the upstairs because our large farmhouse had only one source of heating, a fat gas oil heater in the living room. My dad would pull the steel frame of the 3-tiered bunk bed from wherever he had stored it when he dismantled it the spring before. He'd assemble this frame, and then 3 mattresses were put on the flat wired springs, bedded up, and I would then sleep on the top bunk, my sister in the middle, and my little brother Bob on the bottom bunk until warm weather returned. That one New Year's Eve I remember, well, it isn't actually the eve, but rather the next morning. The eve was probably spent playing games or watching television with the girl from down the road. I think her name was Brenda Miller. It could have been a different name. Anyway, she was my dad's best friend's oldest daughter, who often babysat with us when my parents, on the rare special occasion, went out. She was fun, so I figured that Eve was fun for us, even if I don't remember one moment from it. At a certain time, probably between 8 and 9, Brenda would have put us in bed, tucked us in, then tucked herself onto the couch to watch TV, and, like me and my mate decades later, tried to keep herself awake until my folks got home, which would naturally be at least a drive's length after midnight. I awoke the next morning and found that someone had left a kind of gift next to my pillow. It was a colorful thing. Could have been one of those New Year's kazoo horns. Might have been a clacker. My brother and sister also had one of those things next to their pillows. Those things that adults use to make noise when the clock strikes 12 and the transitional kisses are shared and the toasts are made. My parents did not get out of bed right away. My mom probably did. Finally, she couldn't just leave her kids without breakfast for very long, even though we were pretty well trained in pouring cornflakes and Cheerios and milk for ourselves, as well as switching on the TV for holiday morning cartoons until the adults shook off the late-night fog. As an adult, I don't have a lot of memories of celebrations of New Year's Eve. It wasn't really a thing for me at university. Oh, I probably went to one party or another. It certainly wasn't a family thing. I do remember one year in New York City, my then mate and I had dinner with an elderly woman named Madeline. You'll meet her in the last story of the fictional interlude series. And another elderly friend of ours in her flat on Lexington Avenue. We had roast duck and trimmings. Then that mate, Stephen, and I walked down Fifth Avenue and were happily surprised to see the Central Park fireworks celebrating the New Year. We didn't know they had fireworks New Year in New York City. For the past 30-some years, I've been celebrating in a very low-keyed fashion. The first several of those years, I celebrated alone. My mate tended to work as a waiter and was almost always on duty. I'd pour some dark wine into a dish for my wonderful cat Geppetto. We'd stand on a balcony of our flat and count the chimes of the nearby church or cathedral, raise a glass. That was pretty much it. More recently, let's say the past 10 or 15 years, my mate and I have a quiet dinner, always something delicious and special. He usually cooks. Thanksgiving is my duty. I prepare the table and the sweets and the grapes. We both listen to a Charlie Brown Christmas album. We also send out more recently the holiday messages to friends and family. My mate has more of those to send out than I do. Mine is mostly my brother Bob, a friend from New York City, Michael, some of the in-laws. This year I sent out the same message with personalization to 6 people. It read, quote, "Thinking of you all, hoping you'll be celebrating all the wonderful things that have happened to you over the past 365 days and making exciting plans for the 365 days we all have ahead of us. I'm planning on writing, taking up watercolor painting, and strumming away on the guitar. Might even get that violin out and learn a tune or two. 2026 is the year I officially retire, though I actually did that over 30 years ago. Ha! Anyway, wishing you all a pleasant bringing in of the new year from foggy Spain. Cheers!" My only mention of the incoming year as a number is in reference to the fact that I become a retired person in May of that year. It is a date, not an event, not an entity. I've never been under the yoke of the New Year's resolutions wagon. I may have made a resolution or other back when I actively participated in the social structure of holiday celebration, but can't remember any in particular. Probably the same old tropes like go to the gym or quit smoking or whatever. In general, though, I couldn't come to an understanding of why that change of date, that tick up of the final digit by 1, was somehow a magic gateway to a new life. Always seemed pretty artificial to me, made clear by the trope of resolutions not kept. Another bromide I simply didn't want to buy into was the idea that the year being left behind had necessarily been worse than the hopes for the year being ushered in. The worst would be to consider the aged year as an annus horribilis, while expecting the nascent year to be better. I really don't think that something magical happens on swallowing 12 grapes with the chimes of midnight, or kissing your girl, or raising your glass, that makes a negative attitude evaporate in a second, guaranteeing a better result in the future. It's just unfair to a year to cast such a negative pall or demand such excessively positive outcomes. So, New Year's morning, as my mate and I had our second coffee in bed, enjoying the total lack of need to throw back the covers, get dressed, and do something, we chatted quite superficially about how we'd enjoyed our simple dinner the night before: shrimp and avocado salad with spicy rose sauce, followed by shrimp and seafood cannellones, followed by chocolates and torrones, and all washed away by a delicious local red wine. We didn't propose resolutions. We didn't talk about how awful 2025 had been, nor did we talk about how we hoped 2026 would be better. Our chat was general, pleasant, again, superficial. I mentioned how I had avoided naming the years in my greetings to those 6 people. I pointed out how my activities for the new year were focused on the frivolous. My mate wasn't sure if frivolous was quite the right word. Playing the guitar, writing, painting, learning the violin, those were not silly things to focus upon. They were not unimportant. And I agree with him. I would never consider those things unimportant. I think I was actually passively inferring that I was not going to sign up to focus on that which others considered important or meaningful. I say frivolous because by focusing on those activities, I feel I am keeping importance at bay, a return to a basic attitude of mine upon moving to New York City. Nothing is important. There will be events, responsibilities, actions in my next 365 days that would fall under the general umbrella classification of important. I won't be placing that label, but I can easily recognize that filing my retirement application papers on time in February could be classified as important. Unregistering the lien on my now paid-for house is important. Getting the roof fixed, varnishing the stairs, some pretty massive reparations in the patio, those could fall under the label of important. But it will not be because of that label that I will do those things. and I won't allow the implied label of important to eclipse that focus I plan for the frivolous. I've mentioned it before, screen time must be reduced. Bad news consumption must be nearly obliterated. Time I must spend frugally on those time-consuming activities that bring me pleasure, that enrich my feelings and experience. If it is important rather than frivolous, then it will take a back seat to the frivolous. It will get done, but not because it is important, rather because it is less frivolous than those other activities. It's not that it's important that I improve my guitar playing or my watercolor painting or that I get that short story written or that podcast episode produced. It is rather that I can spend the time on these activities and know that the reward will be greater than the paperwork for the pension. Not sure about the paperwork for the pension. That's kind of something I just can't set aside just because I'm struggling with that chord progression. Well, just some simple thoughts as we transition from writing out the numbers 2025 to 2026. Not a big change there, just one digit incremented by 1. This is a 1 year. 2 plus 0 plus 2 plus 6 equals 10. 1 plus 0 equals 1. Start of the 9-year cycle. Going to be frivolous. Cheers.
You're listening to Radio Revel. Listen, like, subscribe, and share.